Welcome, welcome. Sometimes it takes a few minutes for get people in here.
Oh yeah, I know how that goes.
Yeah, but how's before we get started? I'm just kind of curious how the fishing is when it's really hot out.
You know what? If I feel like if you know what the fish are doing, right, you can get on them. But a lot of people get extremely frustrated in July and August because they don't understand where the fish go, what they're doing at this time of the year, and a lot of people what they'll do is they'll just keep pulling out the same lure that they fished in May and June and July and August, and they expect it to continue to perform for them. And they're fishing the same spots with same lures, and they're like, "Oh, 2 months ago I was slamming them. Like I was getting some bigs out of this one spot, and now I'm coming up short." And so, I mean, that's part of what a lot of what I teach on my channel is like, okay, you got to evolve as an angler, and you got to put in the work, because if you don't, then you'll just keep on getting those mediocre results or very frustrating results.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, it looks like we're getting some people in on here.
All right. You got some good replay value too. I mean, some of your shows are hitting like 1,000, which is great. Congrats.
Yeah, every once in a while they do pretty good. Guess you gotta get that hit that little algorithm there, and
Right. Is it the topic? Do you notice that topics kind of pull away from the rest, or what is it?
I don't know. I haven't really figured it out because I'll have some really good conversation ones that go crazy. I mean, everybody asking questions. You can tell the chat's really involved in it because they'll start asking a bunch of questions, and then
Right.
it doesn't do as good. And then some, they just blow up for some odd reason.
Yeah. And it's the ones that you never want, that you don't want to blow up, that blow up. And it's the really good ones that YouTube's like, nah, we don't want any of that actual
Yeah,
value. We
yeah. And I've had like really real big YouTubers, and I figure, wow, this one's going to go crazy, and it does less than somebody that I've like 1,000 subscribers, and I don't know.
I haven't been able to figure it out either. Hey, I got a few people who are over on my channel a lot. Cooler Lid, AP 120. My man, thanks for stopping by, brother.
Yeah, we got Dana B, Brew W, and I think, well, we go ahead and get started. Why don't you tell everybody about your channel and what you're into on the channel and what you do.
Yeah, so my niche within YouTube is kayak fishing. So if you were to brand my channel right now, and it constantly evolves like every other channel out there, but think kayak fishing or kind of fishing for the weekend warrior, right? Kind of the entry level. People are wanting to get involved, wanting to get in the water.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of sick of sitting on the bank and fishing where the
Yep,
thousands of other people are throwing in the same
where all the
exact spot.
snags are.
Right, where all the snags are. And all they do as they're sitting on the bank, and they're catching fish too, is they're looking all around the lake, thinking, how in the world do I get to that spot, that spot, that spot? And then they see me rolling by, and my I saw, I got a bunch of people over here. Fishing with Gramps is on, is a buddy of mine, and he affectionately calls his kayak the Kayadalac. And so you got me and my Kayadalac rolling by, right? And everyone's like, and you can hear him, because voice just travels so far over the water, so you can actually hear their conversations, even though they don't think you can. And so, like, oh, I need to get me one of these. I need to get out there. And so, a lot of what you see on my channel is, of course, I have a live show as well called the KFO show, the Kayak Fishing Obsessed. So I do interviews with people in the industry as well, and so that's kind of fun. I did that really just to, I was I was creating videos and felt really lonely. So I was like, I need to make some friends. I didn't start it for watch time. I didn't start it for views. I started it to kind of find some friendships out there and to kind of interview and talk about something we all love, which is fishing. And so I have that. And then a lot of my other parts of my channel, when I started off, a lot of it was kayak modifications. right? DIY modifications, because
Yeah.
I like saving money. I like working with my hands. I have a crap ton of tools. And so what are some creative ways we can get out there, create quality products? Like, for example, a lot of people end up buying their kayak crate, right? Something goes behind their seat. They can put
Yeah.
in.
I've seen that.
Yep. And so,
All it looks like is two crates, one cut a little bit.
yeah.
I don't know if that's what it is, but to me, that's what it
Well,
looks like.
I mean, essentially what it is if you buy these, you can buy
Oh,
it. They run
they actually sell 'em?
$180, sometimes
Wow.
more. And so I was like, all right, 2 milk crates cut together, bungee cord, a few other mods, and boom. You got a banger video. And so I did a lot of those DIY, and I think I got a lot of people who were like, yeah, I like to save money too, because everything with the name kayak attached to it is freaking expensive, right? You got like
Yeah.
pliers, $1.99, kayak pliers, $10.99. It's just like stupid how that all kind of rolls out. But it's been fun. I'm starting to get into fishing. I'll do lures. I'll do, like, right now, I was out in the water this morning. I usually go out before work, and I shot a video on kind of what's the difference between a $50 rod and a $250 rod, right? So what are the benefits? What are you getting between the two? Because, you and I could go out to Walmart right now, buy a $70 combo and still
Yeah.
catch fish, right? So why do I need to go out and buy a $250 rod and then put a $150 reel on it? What is that going to do for me? So I was out there on the water, got some nice big ones this morning, 17, 18-inch bass, 2 of those, which was nice. And I shot a video last 45 minutes and came home. So a lot of that type stuff. So yeah, it's been a journey for me for the last. I started about a little over 2.5 years ago, a little bit more than that.
Yeah. I've been looking. Well, at first I was looking for a canoe, and then I seen a fishing kayak, because I always thought the kayaks, that's that thing you squeeze into, and you go like this.
Get in the
And then I
cockpit.
seen a fishing kayak, and I'm like, oh, that is cool. And it happened to be you talking about 10 things that not to do or something like that. I forget what it was, but you were talking about your life jacket. So there's a difference between the normal boating life jackets and the kayak ones. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I kept on watching and watching,
Yeah.
and like uh, about falling out or flipping the kayak. It's not. It's when you will flip it, not
Not
if.
if. That's how that usually works. I was
Yeah.
out with my dad, and it was May, right? So it's cold. Water temperature is in 50-degree water, and people underestimate the water temperature and what
Mhm.
it will do to you, right? As someone, you understand this because I did a little research on your channel before I hopped on. But I mean, you might only have, like, if you get in that water and you can't
Oh
right
yeah.
your yak and can't get back in, you have like 30 to 40 minutes before you go unconscious if you can't make it to the shore, right? A lot of
Mhm.
people are going into shock 'cause they don't realize how risky it was. And I was out with my dad. It was May. I was around this corner and he yells out to me. And I thought he caught a fish. I'm like, ah, sweet. So I take my kayak. I have a pedal driven kayak, right? Which is like next level stuff if you're not really into kayaks. There's paddle kayaks. Then there's pedal drive kayaks, which it's like a recumbent bike and you're sitting on a kayak. And they have motors on these things and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm pedaling over to my dad and he is sopping wet, right?
Oh.
He got out and he fell in the water and he got back. And I was just thinking to myself, because he was cold, right? And he was with me. I had an extra jacket and all that stuff. But if he was alone and he had to, there's about 25 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe more for him to get back to where the truck was. That would have been really risky and extremely dangerous. And so if people don't understand how to, if they don't
Oh
have
yeah.
they don't have all that stuff in their kayak, if they're not thinking through this and they're just like, oh, sweet, I got my kayak in December and I'm so jacked up. I'm going to go on right after ice off. And they don't think through
Oh.
the safety of it. And, it's their first time in. A lot of kayaks have great primary stability versus secondary stability. So that means when you get in it, it's really good. But once you take a turn, it's not really great, right? You can flip them over if you're not used to that balance. So yeah, it can get dangerous. So that was interesting. I wonder how you found and started getting how you found me and why you invited me. So now I know the origin story.
Yep. And I mean that's the thing. As soon as I found, and you know the way a computer is and everything, if you look for something on one platform like YouTube or Facebook or whatever the case may be, I was searching for fishing kayaks on Facebook,
Okay.
and then I happened to come onto YouTube, and poof, there you are, right at the
Everywhere.
top.
Yeah, all in your face, everywhere you look. I mean, I
And,
post like 5 times a day, so it makes sense. Once you're in the algorithm, you can't get out.
yeah, and I was like, oh, this is cool, and I learned a lot of stuff, and I there are some other ones that I watched that were supposed to be teaching and stuff, and I noticed they didn't wear life jacket or
Mhm.
anything, and I thought that's very odd because I don't care how good you are, one little slip and you can bang your head or whatever, and if you're not conscious, no life jacket, you're going to go underwater.
Right, and this is crazy, right? Because in Ohio, where you and I live, you don't have to wear one. All you have to do is
Mhm.
have one on your vessel. But, logic says it's not gonna do me a whole lot of good when it's stuffed down in my bow in the middle of my kayak and it's not accessible.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of, like, low profile. You got the traditional, right? It has all the pockets, and that's what I typically wear. When it gets, like, super hot, like 90 plus, I get a low profile one, which it has a CO2 cartridge in it, and then once I hit the water, it either dissolves the cap off the top and
Oh,
it'll blow. It's kind of I've seen videos of it. It seems like terrifying, right? And so those kind of crazy, but sometimes people wear those and I've seen them go over in the water and I'm like, "Oh, that thing failed." And then in the comments they're like, "Oh
oh,
no, it's a manual inflate." I was like, "This makes no sense, right?" Because I'm a really great swimmer. So back
yeah.
in 2015, I swam across Lake Michigan. 50.6 miles nonstop. I know it sounds kind of crazy. It was stupid. I used to do long distance endurance challenges all the time, but my goal was to swim from New Buffalo in Michigan to Navy Pier, and so it took me 35 hours to make that swim. And so,
Wow.
if anybody is good at swimming, like and doesn't need to wear a life jacket, it's me, and I still do because, like you said, you don't need a life jacket when you're a good swimmer. And that's the number one reason people don't wear them, right? The
Mhm.
number one reason is, "Oh, I'm a really great swimmer." You don't need one when you're a great swimmer. You need one when you can't swim, right? And you're unconscious. Crazy things
Yeah.
happen. I had a buddy. He texted me about a month ago, and he was standing up in his fishing kayak. He just got one, and he's a police officer up in Cleveland, right? So he's fit. He's got great balance, great equilibrium. He's moving himself around this log that's kind of lay down, and that thing breaks, snaps on him, falls on him, and flips him, flips his kayak, and all of his untethered gear falls in like
Oh
7.5 feet
no.
of water, right? And so he spent the next 2 days diving for all that stuff. But yeah, gotta wear it, folks. Doesn't matter if you're a good swimmer. None of that stuff matters. Live
Yep.
to fish another day.
Yep. And that's one thing I seen. It was um, every like your poles and all your gear is make sure well you call them tethers. I was just because I didn't know what they were. I just said leash.
Oh yeah,
They're
they're leashes.
leashes.
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. Same.
Yeah, bungee cords on the poles in the back and everything. I was like, dang,
Well,
they're
those
really expecting that thing to flip over.
no, and you never do, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And when it happens, it's usually some freak accident. I recently did a video said I think it was like 11 mistakes, 11 kayak fishing mistakes that can take your life. And I did a lot of research on this video. It actually was like I posted it like a month ago. It's like 30,000 40,000 views. It's kind of crazy. And what I found in my research is it's usually not just one of those mistakes, right? Like offshore, and there's I can't name them off the top of my head right now. It's always a combination of one other mistake plus another one plus not wearing your PFD, and then it's game over. And it happens all the time. I have so many comments. If you read the comments on that video, like, oh, we said 2 people pass away on my lake this past week. Oh, about a month ago, a father and son went out without life jackets and didn't come back. So it's sad, and it doesn't need to be. Give yourself a chance for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you're in what is it, a tournament?
Oh yeah. I must have mentioned that in the video. I mentioned everywhere. So I am part of. I'm not a big tournament guy, right? So I never really wanted to get a tournament. I thought it would ruin it for me. I just love going out there, just a peaceful, being in a kayak, being so close to water, being so stealthy. You're coming up on animals that don't move because you're not in the motor, you're not making noise. So I think raccoons and bald eagles and ospreys. It's just I love it. I love it. And so I didn't want to get into the tournament scene because I thought it would ruin, oh, I got to get the biggest bass, got to get the biggest bass. But Chad Hoover, like the godfather of kayak fishing, gives me a call. And he's like, hey, I want to start up this kind of like entry level, get people into a tournament type deal. And I want you to anchor one of the teams. And so how it's set up is if someone can fish one of my 4-month tournaments. And if you win that tournament, you win a spot on my team. And then once we have a total of 5 of us, we're going to go down to Lake Gunnersville down in Huntsville, Alabama, or Wheeler Lake. You can fish one of the two. And we're going to fish off against all these other anchors to the teams. So if you knew anything about like kayak fishing world, like I'm fishing against Fluke Master and his team, Chad Hoover fishing with Gramps, who's in the live chat right now. Larry Melton Jr., the aggressively average anglers. If you were like into fishing and kayak fishing, you would know all of these names, and we're all going down there to fish off against one another for a $10,000 prize pack and the Hero Cup. And so, kayak fishing is a little bit different. So when people usually think of tournaments, they think, oh, you go out for a day and then you bring your fish back to a weigh-in, and then everyone sees this picture, everyone holding up fish, and then you determine the winner based off of the most pounds. Kayak fishing, I'm sure there's tournaments like that, but the tournament I'm part of is called a CPR tournament, catch, photo, release. And so what you do is you catch your bass, you pull it up on your kayak, and you pull out this catch board. It's a measuring board, and everybody who's doing this tournament has to use the exact same board, right? It's a catch, and so there's no variances in the length.
Yeah.
So you put this thing at the bottom of your kayak. You got to put a net off to the side, right? Because these fish like to jump out. And I've had them jump out. We've had an 18-inch jump out. I got it on video. It did well as a short video, but I had my hand on it and everything, and things are so powerful. He flipped off, went into the I did the silence, and I just looked over to the side. I was like, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And so now I take them down into like the bottom of my kayak. I put a net over the side in case it decides to jump. And you got to get that thing to stay still for a second and
take a picture at the same time.
Take a picture, hold it down. I got my phone tethered to my life jacket. The thing's flopping around. You're trying to like bend the tail down, because when it's fanned out, you lose a 1/4 inch. It's like you're trying to bend the tail down to get it to the next line. And if the mouth opens on the bass, you get a 1/4 inch deduction. So you're trying to keep the mouth shut, keep the thing from flopping, get the tail fanned. You can't touch it in certain spots, right? Because people have cheated in the past by putting their hand over certain parts of the fish and like putting fake tails on it to extend it. People have cut boards and like put that under the fish and extended it. And it's and so there's all these rules around it. And if you're lucky, you get to upload this thing to, it's called Fishing Chaos, and you basically can see everyone's leaderboard. And so it's a learning curve for sure. But I've actually really loved it, right? Because I've always wondered, and I've had this channel for 2.5 years. Like, how good am I actually at fishing? Like, I feel like I'm pretty good. But I've never been in tournaments. I never fished against other people, so I really don't know. And so it's your top best 5 fish, their length combined. And so I've been in the high 80s, the kind of mid 90s inches the last few months in a row. So I'm finishing top 4,
Ooh.
top 2. Haven't got the first. I mean, I'm also fishing against people down the south, right? And so you got a largemouth bass strain that
Yeah.
grows bigger down in the south. So I'm probably never going to win against, individuals who are fishing those fisheries. But up here, I mean, last month my biggest fish was 21.25 inches. This
Ooh.
morning I grabbed an 18-incher and like a 17.5 incher. Those are some big ones for Ohio.
Yeah.
Are
Those
you
good sizes.
are you a fisherman?
Um, I dabble. That's one thing I wanted to get into is the kayak, because I've got a small lake that's not too far from here. It's a small lake, and they have like a little, because you can't take boats over to the one side unless you have a boat on one side and you can scoot underneath this little pipe
Oh yeah.
that goes to the other side.
Oh yeah.
If you can fit under that and go over to the other side, there's really good fishing over there.
Oh heck yeah. And
If
boats can't, I mean, bass boats can't get there.
Oh no, there's not even way.
Oh,
You have to park at the park, and then you drag a boat down there. So I know there's not many that do it. I've seen, and like I said, I've seen canoes do it, but that the whole canoe thing went out the window when I seen the fishing kayak,
yeah.
and I was like, oh, that's me right there.
That's it. I mean,
Because you
kayaks
can
have
have all
replaced
these gadgets and things all right there. You don't have to get up and move to one end to the other and grab something.
it's a blast. I mean, I feel like canoes have been replaced by kayaks like minivans have replaced the the what are they called? Station wagons, right?
Oh
Of
yeah,
the day. Like I have every once in a while someone will pop into my comments, right? Be like, "Oh, canoe all day long." I hear that every once in a while. I primarily hear, "Oh, John boat will always be, a fishing kayak any day." And I was like, "Hey, guy, you do you, go to town." But if you've never said, I mean, so I'm into fishing kayaks, but I got to remember, like the audience that's probably on tonight, you know what a kayak look like, but a lot of times, these recreational kayaks that you see at Walmart is not what we're talking about here. Like,
yeah. I've
so
I've I've been learning the difference between the two, because
yeah,
there'll be some that looks like a fishing one, but they're extra skinny, and they all the rail bars on the side. They
oh
don't
yeah,
have nothing to strap anything to or anything.
yep. So
Yeah.
you got those Sun Dolphin Aruba 10s, and I have one of those, and I found mine in the Ohio River tributary. I told the police about it, and I had a VIN number and everything. Like, hey, if no one comes back to get this kayak, it's yours. And that was like 3 years ago. So I actually started modding out the Sun Dolphin, which is not a fishing kayak at all. It is like the cheapest kayak you could buy. It's like $300. All it is a cockpit and a paddle. And so I'm like adding rod holders and bungee nets and cutting out the hatch and make it deeper. And so, but when I talk about fishing kayak, I'll kind of explain mine a little bit. I have 2 of them. They're pedal drive, and the brand is I have a Native Slayer Propel 10 and a Bonafide P127. So whenever you hear a number after a fishing kayak, it's referring to the length, right? A Native Slayer
Oh,
Propel 10 is 10 feet. A Bonafide P127 is 12 feet 7 inches. And so that's how you can immediately know how long that thing is. And so, I mean, these things, they're not cheap. And
yeah.
I was out, I was out this morning hopping in the water early on. It's dark, and this guy's like catfishing. And he's like, "How much does something like that cost?" And I was like, "Well, I've never paid MSRP for these things, but on the Bonafide P127 I'm in right now, MSRP, like bare, just the motor and the boat and the kayak, you're like $3,200. It's built like a battleship, but at the end of the day, it's still, roto-molded plastic. And it has, now I have fish finders on it, and you can track mounts that you can put
Yeah.
anything and everything on nowadays. And so if you're really getting into it, you could go there, and there's some fishing kayaks I've seen that are $10,000-$12,000
Wow.
with all their electronics. They got live scope, so they can actually see the fish down below. Their batteries are 100 amp hours. They got double graphs, right? Double trolling motors. They got power poles with a flick of a button. Poles will go down the ground, 2 of them,
Oh,
to
wow.
to keep them from like moving left to right. And so, I mean, when COVID happened, everybody and their brother bought a fishing kayak.
Oh,
It was crazy. So the secondary market for fishing kayaks right now is insane. So if you're like listening to this, you're like, oh yeah, I think I can get into this like fishing kayak thing, because it's like sitting in a lawn chair, fishing around, hands free fishing. So you don't have to paddle. You can just kind of pedal. The secondary market for getting these on Facebook Marketplace is crazy right now, because everyone bought them and now they don't have time to use them.
yeah. That's where I've been looking. And when I first started looking, $100 for this, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And when I went and looked at it, it was a little bitty thing.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't see that working.
$100? I'm surprised you even saw a kayak for $100.
Yeah. Like I said, it was actually where you have to sit inside of it.
Oh, one of those little cockpit
And,
guys. Yeah.
yeah.
Sit in kayak. Oh,
Yeah.
man.
And that's the label they had on a fishing kayak, because it did have a hole in the back to where they put a fishing thing in there, holder for the fishing pole.
I've seen those. And that I've seen it. I think Pelican does that. They're like, oh, and your Pelican catch whatever it is. And they're like,
Yeah, I think
it's a
it was
fishing kayak, because they threw a hole that hold the
Yeah.
pole. Done. Fishing kayak.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah. There's a debate I get with people all the time. Like, oh, you got one person will say, oh, when you're getting into kayak fishing, start out with a cheaper kayak and like upgrade over time. I don't believe that's a great way to enter into it, because
No.
you enter into a crappy kayak, you're gonna have a crappy experience, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a nice seat, you're not gonna be comfortable, and you're gonna hate it, right? If you get into a cheap kayak that has bad stability and you flip it, well, you're not gonna get in again. So get something nice. And how do you know if it's nice? Like there's a crap ton of videos on YouTube about guys who will do, flip it and stability tests and walkthroughs. I always tell people you can go to I think my local store here up in Akron, Falls Outdoors, will actually let you rent a fishing kayak for a day
Oh,
for like
wow.
$50. You can take out one of these kayaks and get used to it and fish from it from a day and bring it back. Be like, yeah, that's the one I want. And so sometimes kayak companies do demo days where you can go out on certain days of the month, and they have all their fishing kayaks out, right? They all took them out there, and you can kind of test a bunch of different ones. So there's a lot of different options out there if you're looking to get into the sport.
Yeah, that'd be the way to go. Because like the paddle ones, I haven't seen any of those on Facebook Market,
Okay.
at least in this area, because you only do a certain area. And the ones I did see, yeah, I wouldn't trust being on them. They just look so flimsy and stuff. And like I said, the most of them are the Pelican ones.
Yeah. And a lot of people get those as entry level, and they quickly realize I either don't like this or I need to upgrade like tomorrow.
Mm,
And so, and they take up a lot of room. Like a lot of people don't have time, like places to store these things. You got
yeah,
a couple 10-foot fishing kayaks. You're like, okay, this thing's just sitting out here getting brittle in the sun. But yeah, it's a blast.
And that's another thing. The ones that I seen have been sitting out outside for a couple years, and I'm like,
Risky
how
business.
does this set up? How does it hold up in the sunlight, being out here all the time?
Yeah, I can tell you that.
They're wonderful. They'll last for years, and I can sit there and look and see cracks around some of the seams of where they have screws or whatever, and I can see cracks forming, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
Nope,
a
not for me.
hard pass. I actually did a video on this. I think I called it, use fishing buying guide, buyer beware. And I walk you through all the different things to look for on a used fishing kayak so you don't get a lemon and find out about it when you get home. And a lot of times people just don't care of it, right? They keep it out in the sun. Polyethylene plastic in the sun over time will do to your kayak what the sun did to the front row of Blockbuster, all those videos, right? It's going to fade it out. It's going to get brittle and it will crack on you a lot easier. And how people store them, right? If you got a heavy kayak, you're not turning it over, storing it on its gunnels for the winter. That's not good for it either. Long exposed pressure on these things where they're not designed to have it. There's a lot of bad scenarios you can get yourself into, especially when you're going to find a used one, because you don't know. So you got to inspect it, because you
Yeah.
can't really take their word for it. They're trying to paint a pretty picture. So you take this thing off the property. So check that video out. It's a good one.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out. Now on to fishing.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about a little bit about the heat. It's been a bit hot up here in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people around here, you can't fish when it's hot. The fish don't bite and this and that. But I never really had issues of fishing certain times. I just if I feel like going fishing, I just go fishing,
Right.
and then change from there. I'll go live bait or worms, or I'll go for lures. Because I usually don't settle on one thing. I'll have 2-3 poles doing one thing, and then I'll sit there lure fish for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Whoever's saying, don't fish in the heat, please keep saying that to keep people off the water so I have the lake to myself. This false statement all around, right? You can catch fish literally every day of the year, even winter when it's iced over, right? You just got to know what those bass, well, for me, it's bass, right? Or catfish. It can be everything. It's got to know the seasonal movements, right? Right now, how I'm catching them. Here, I brought some of my stuff with me. All right. This guy right here has been an absolute beast. So this is a 3/8 ounce jig, and it's a peanut butter and jelly color. It's a tungsten jig head right here. And then I just put a trailer on it. I usually put this trailer, but I ran out of them. So this is a KVD, Kevin Van Dam. So it's well known in the fishing industry. He just retired, actually. This is called a rodent. So I'll stick this on as a trailer. And a jig, you just let it fall to the bottom, pop, pop, pop. And that's what I caught this morning, my 18-inch bass on. And it's hot. And so last month, that jig caught my 21.25 and 2 19-inch bass. And so you just got to know what they're doing, right? So this is a mistake a lot of anglers make. And primarily getting into fishing, I get a lot of people like, oh, I've been fishing 40 years. I'm back to it. And all they remember is how they first caught their fish when their dad, grandpa, mom, or somebody else taught them, right?
Yeah.
So they caught it on a spinner bait. And so they're like, oh, I'm just going to use a spinner
Rooster
bait,
tail.
a rooster tail, whatever,
Yeah.
The problem is that's all they have in their tackle box. So they go out and use a spinner bait in the middle of August, which if you're going to use a spinner bait, typically in the middle of August is not when you want to do it. It's in the spring and fall. And you can still catch fish on it, right? They're going to do it. But there's a lot of other options for you that are going to perform better in August. And so people never evolve as an angler, and they keep on using the same thing. They're like, oh, the fish aren't biting. But they were in the spring when I was using this particular lure. That's because that lure performs better in the spring. And so you just got to know what they're doing right now in August. So if you're going to go out tomorrow, I mean, bass do all kinds of crazy things. There's shallow water bass, after spawn, there's shallow water bass. Some go out deep. And I feel like a lot of the big bass will go out deep. And so where you're going to find them right now, being that it's hot, and bass don't typically like to be hot, right? That's why you find them really close to structure, underwater structure. So you have a lay down of a tree, they're going to be like right next to that thing, basically touching it. If you have a dock, this is why a lot of bass boats will be, and kayak anglers will be trying to get their lures far up under that dock as possible, because that's where these fish are. So anytime, any place you see shade, anytime you see, a dark place, any dark place in that particular body of water, that's where you want to be throwing your lure as close as possible to, because that's where those bass are hiding right now.
Yep. Like I used to use a lot of a rooster tail.
Oh yeah.
That was my go-to. I always, if I wasn't catching something with something else, I just pop that rooster tail on and toss it out there.
Oh heck
But
yeah.
I'd been getting into, the little rubber worms and the little larvae looking things, and I seen them. One you were talking about. Oh, I'm gonna butcher the name. Something the
Yama Tanuki.
Yeah,
Right here.
that
I
thing.
brought it. Oh yeah. Heck yeah. So this is a heavy soft plastic bait by a company called Yamamoto, created by Gary Yamamoto. They have some of the best plastics, in my opinion, for fishing out there. However, the reason that makes them so special is that they have a patent on how much salt you can put into a fishing soft plastic, right? And so if you reach that certain threshold, they have like one of the most vicious like legal teams out there. They'll come after you. And so you can still find salt, but not to the degree that they put it in there. So when you put a lot of salt into a fishing lure, that sinks a lot faster. And what happens when you put into a lure like this, a big soft, or if you put it into a worm, put a lot of salt in that. When this hits the water, if it doesn't have a lot of salt in it, this plastisol, which this is made out of, will slowly fall, right? It'll just kind of do this in the water, real slow. If you have a lot of salt in your particular lure and it hits the water, this thing will start to flutter like this as it kind of goes down, like real slowly. But it'll go down fairly fast. And that drives bass out of their minds. That flutter fall on those worms. Now, because of that, the Yamamoto worms are like 85 cents per worm. It's kind of crazy. And it's hard for a lot of people to justify, because I can get 100 of these. These are Yum Dingers. I can get 100 of these for 28 cents a worm. And so it was a big price differential in between the two. So when I'm like tournament fishing, I'm using the Yamamotos with salt, and I actually put like a harness over it so I don't lose it, like a shrink wrap. But the Yama Tanuki, this thing's crazy. It looks like a freaking bowling pin, right?
Yeah.
You put a 5/0 hook, which is it's a size of fishing hook. It goes from like, fishing hook sizes are crazy. So it starts at like 32, and they're like super tiny for like trout, and it goes all the way up to like 1, and they start getting bigger, and then it goes to 1/0, and then they start getting bigger from 1/0, 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, 5/0. And so that's kind of the variation from small to large. And so this is a fairly large hook. I mean, it's probably that big right here. So you Texas rig that through there, and I throw this out, and I can't tell you how many bass I've caught in the last 2 months with this stupid looking lure. You let it fall and they'll nail it. You burn it real fast and pause it, and they'll like run into it and they'll swallow it. I throw it on top of lily pads, and they kind of roll it across like a frog, and they're busting out of lily pads and busting it. And so this is an extremely versatile lure for me. I'll throw it on the bank and like pop it out real fast like a frog, like something coming off the shore. And they'll hit it like a freight train. And so, I mean, they're $1.25 each, but you get 8 to a pack. And I did a video on it called the $1.25 lure that nobody knows about and how to slay bass with it. And so if you're interested,
yeah,
this thing's crazy.
Yeah, that I'm not that well experienced in those, because like I said, the majority of my fishing was all bait. And
live bait?
I started branching off because I got bored of sitting there waiting for the fish to bite. So I started, well, what do I got in this tackle box, and put it on something. start tossing it out and see what I get.
Oh yeah. So you do
And
primarily live bait?
yeah,
Got it.
yeah. Um, we because I right around here we have this one lake. I wouldn't even call it a lake. It's smaller than a lake, but we have that one over here, which is a lake park area, and then we have um, kind of a lake that's next to a river that when it floods, all the catfish get stuck in there,
Oh yeah, there we go.
and that's where I fish usually for catfish. Unfortunately, now I'm kind of skeptical of eating those, but I'll still catch them because, well, you know what happened in Ohio.
Yeah.
Bunch of stuff got dumped in the water.
That wouldn't have made it to you, would it? That was
Uh,
more.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to trust that or
Yeah, I
not
don't.
because
Yeah.
it's the Tuscarawas River. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
maybe. You live down in an area which is one of my favorite places to fish. Which I'm not gonna like give it away, but Powerlands. I love fishing down there. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I do, but I thought that was further south.
It is a little further south than you.
Okay, yeah,
But you're close. You could
yeah,
be on it really soon. And
yeah.
so I love coming down there and
I
those
used to
strips.
live down there
Did you? All right.
many years ago. Yeah,
Okay. Were you able to get out in those ponds?
yeah.
Oh man.
We did everything from fishing, hunting, and all kinds of stuff out there.
Oh yeah. I mean, morels are everywhere. I mean, it's
Yep.
it's like wild and wonderful. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not West Virginia, but it's
we do
close.
have a I'm not sure if it's a private lake or but they open the gates and say you can come back here. But they there's one real small one and oh, it was a probably about a 4 pound bass that I caught in there.
Oh heck yeah.
Pretty small little pond.
Yeah.
And they had it blocked off, says no vehicles past that,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't say you couldn't walk back there.
Right.
And I continue walking back there, and there's a bigger lake back there, and I was like, "Oh!"
Yeah.
And I was catching them left and right up there.
It's
I
it's
never
really
kept,
a
I
special
never
place.
kept any of them. Just put them back in there. It was more of a sport thing.
Yeah. And that's me too. I mean, I don't eat. I might eat one smallmouth bass a year, and that's about it. I always love. I mean, they're kind of like my friends, right? It's kind of like throwing back. And yeah, go get bigger. How come someone else can enjoy catching you as much as I did? But what he's referring to is back in like 70s and 80s, they strip mined this part of Ohio, and of course, when you strip mine, you're gonna have a bunch of these holes, and it was like the strip mine was like insane, right? They had one of the biggest buckets, machinery cutting out holes in the earth that was ever made, and so I believe they gave the property to. They just made it public, right? And it's filled up with water since. And whenever you have a strip mine type of pond, it's super clear. And they stocked
Oh
it
yeah.
with bluegill and bass. And so it is a wild and wonderful place. And you just hop from pond to pond. And like you were saying, like there's ponds that you can drive to and you can kind of you could technically back a bass boat into it, but it's really a kayak wonderland. And
Oh
if you
yeah.
want to like get to some of the aggressive, ponds with bass in it that don't see people very often, I mean, you can drag a sun dolphin through the woods for a few hundred yards and find a place that hasn't been fished in a very long time. And so, I mean, it's gotta put into work, gotta find those places. They're out there.
Oh yeah. And some of the best fishing are the ones that have the briars around there. To me, I get a snack from raspberries and blackberries while I'm fishing.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, that's what I love, and that is the number one advantage of a kayak angler, right? And you made mention to it earlier in the show. You're like, hey, I like fishing the spot where only a kayak or a canoe or a pool noodle, right, can go through
Yeah.
this culvert and get to the other side, where it's like fishing Canada, right? No one's ever over there, and those where a lot of the big bass are. And a lot of times when I catch the bigs, I'm not doing it out in the open lake, like going arm in arm with bass boats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm back to the places where they can't get their boat, right? They'd be stuck in a hot second. I'm almost getting stuck. This morning when I caught my 17 and 18, a bass boat couldn't even get close to where I was. And so the number one advantage of a kayak angler is being so stealthy, being so low in the water, and getting to those places that a lot of other people can't get to. That's where the juice is.
Okay. That's about the point where I open everything up. So if there's anybody out there that's got some questions for a guest here, just put it in caps or at Bushcraft, and I should be able to see it.
Yeah, it's been fun kind of watching everybody going to town over here.
Yeah. I was going to say something now. I forgot what it was. Oh, about your tournament. How long did you say that lasted?
So it's 4 months, but it started 4 months ago, right? So I only
Okay.
have 15 days left, and there's already a guy who has over 101 inches on the board
101?
between 5 fish.
Jeez.
I know, he's a freaking hammer. And there's a
That's
lot of hammers in this tournament, like putting up 100. I
and
saw one
is he
time.
down south?
I don't know where he's at. It doesn't
Oh,
say what state they're in. Typically, so it's part of a kind of a kayak fishing tournament company called Kayak Bass Fishing. And it started by Chad Hoover, the guy I mentioned earlier in the show. And most of the time when you do a tournament, you just do it within your own state, right? He does a lot of state tournaments, and you're basically, it's more of an even playing field because you're fishing with the people in your same state, right? So that's usually how it happens. But this is kind of like an entry. It's only $15 to be a part of, right? So,
oh wow.
yeah, I mean, like super cheap to kind of cut your teeth on and to find out whether or not you
And
really
you're going to
like.
be out there fishing anyway.
Right. Just go ahead and try to mangle, try to manhandle a fish and put it on the board. It's a good, it's a good time. You'll learn a few things. But
And here's a question, but I assume it's bass.
what's the question? What's your favorite fish to catch? Me? Yeah, I mean, I love largemouth bass. We'll follow that up. I was just out in Lake Michigan with my wife's uncle. His name is Kenny, and I go out there every couple of years, and he takes me out salmon fishing. There are some king salmon
Oh, I love
in Lake
salmon.
Michigan. Oh yeah, I mean, I got a freezer full right now, and you just basically salmon fishing is interesting, right? They're going to be down the colder temperatures, so we go like 3 or 4 miles out from Lake Michigan. We get up at like 4 a.m. and drop lines in. We drop like 6 lines because you're allowed 3 each. And it's so interesting. You drop some straight down, you drop some off to the right, you put a couple on a paddle, like 300 feet back on a paddle, and then on copper line. So it drops down the lure further in the water column to where these salmon are. And you just kind of troll until one goes and just, I mean, that sound. Oh,
Yeah.
you dream about it. Absolutely dream about it. But
And
I love salmon fishing and also smallmouth bass fishing. So when I'm not kayak fishing, I'm wade fishing, right? I'm getting into those creeks, getting into those streams, and trying to find those smallmouth bass. I was just out in Pennsylvania, central PA, in a place in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone service. It's amazing, right?
oh,
And I'm wading through these clear mountain rivers and streams and creeks. Water's clear. You can see all the rocks on the bottom. And I probably caught in 3.5 days 175 smallmouth bass. I mean, every time I threw in that wacky worm or I had this guy on. This is a Helgramite by Nico.
Helgramite.
Yeah. And so the crazy thing about this lure is it's made with a plastic called TPE. It's like thermoplastic. I don't know. Nonetheless, this is what it does, right? If you tried to do this to the worm, it would have popped in half. But this stuff is like, you can catch 100 fish on it. You'll lose the hook, right? Way before you wear out this particular type of plastic that they use. And so the Helgramite is awesome. And they're native. The Helgramites are native to those systems. So whenever you throw this out into maybe when 2 rocks are coming together and the water's picking up, you throw it to the top and let it fall through like it just accidentally, got kicked up. And the bass, the smallmouth are sitting right there in those seams where the fast water is running in front of their face, and they're just looking for something to come in. As soon as they see it, bam, pop that thing, and all day long, 175. So Nico Helgramite, if you live by a stream or a river and there's smallmouth in there, I mean, I picked up trout was this thing. I picked up my first ever a couple weeks ago. I got my first ever. Oh shoot, what are they called? I don't catch them often enough. Oh shoot, they look like a pike, but they're not. Pickerel, chain pickerel.
Oh,
And so, yeah, so it was a good trip. So those are my kind of top three. And every once in a while, I'll throw a tight line for some catfish. But I'm an equal opportunity fisherman.
and do you go fishing on a kayak in the wintertime?
So, winter is, if there's no ice on the water, this is what I'll wait for. Like, if there's ice in the water, of course I'm not going to go. But as soon as there's no ice in the water, game on. I'm usually out there. They're really difficult to catch right at ice off, right? You got water temperatures in the 40s, and you really have to throw. When I catch them that early, I'm throwing a crankbait, and I'm rolling that thing as slow as I possibly can, because those bass are extremely lethargic. They're cold, and all they want is a super easy meal going really super slow. And so if I'm picking them up early on, it's as slow as I can keep that crankbait wobbling back and forth, but no faster. Usually that does the trick.
And what's your favorite bait to use?
Oh, I was thinking about this because you're the Bushcraft family, and if crap did hit the fan, what would be one technique that I would want to know, right, to put a meal in front of my family? And if you only had one thing, it would be the wacky worm.
The wacky worm.
Yeah, and I showed it what it was a second ago. It's this guy. So it's stupid. So you basically get, I think this is a size 1. I think this is a like an octopus type hook or a circle hook or whatever. It can be bigger. This is kind of small on the smaller end. But you just take one of these rubber worms that everybody has, right? You can buy 100 of them on Amazon for $28. And all you got to do is hook it right in the middle like this. And that's it, folks. This is called the wacky rigged Senko, the wacky worm, depending what type of worm you have on there. And so how you fish this, it's not as easy as just throwing it out and kind of reeling it back in. So you throw this out, and you're going to want to let it. It's like, think of it as a target strategy. You're not trying to cover a ton of water. If you think of the bass is over there, and when it hits the water, you're going to attract the attention of a bass anywhere from probably 10 feet away in all directions.
Yeah.
So you let it fall for 5 seconds, and then you get that flutter fall. A lot of times they'll smash it there. But if they don't, tug, 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 pause. Tug, 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 pause. I do that 5 times. If the bass did not hit in 5 times, I reeled in. Because I found over the years of utilizing this particular way of fishing that if they're not going to hit in the first 5, your chances go down dramatically that they're going to hit it. Now they will from time to time, and I've heard people like, "Oh no, I caught my biggest fish in my life." I'm not saying you won't catch fish.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if you're trying to put a meal in front of you, reel that bad boy in and throw it in a different place, because if you see fishing like I do, which is like the law of averages, you want to be able to put that in high percentage areas all the time. And so if I had to fish one lure the rest of my life, I wouldn't necessarily call it my favorite, but I put the most bass on the line. I like jig fishing right now. There's something about the jig hook set. It's a real stout pull. When you hit that and you pull that thing and it doesn't move, you got like a lunker on the end. Oh, there's nothing like that feeling. Oh man, come on.
Just waiting for it to come up.
Oh yeah, not losing it. I for the longest time I love the idea. I didn't carry a net. It was kind of my thing, right? Everyone else was like, "Oh, get a net, get a landing net," and I was like, "There's something about catching a bass, reeling it to the side of your kayak, and lipping that bad boy, and pulling it up out of the water for like the camera." You're like, "Oh, it feels like, I feel like a man, like my testosterone's going through the roof." And then at the end of the day, you got bass thumb. It's all rough because the inside of their lips are rough. And if you catch enough of them, it like rips up your thumb, and they're shaking back and forth. But then I got into tournament fishing, and I kept losing fish at the boat. Fish I never realized that I kept losing at the boat until you're like, till the big one. So I
Yeah.
have this net now, and it's a foldable net. So it's not super high behind me on my kayak, but it folds over. So I reach back, and all I got to do is like throw it over. It folds out, locks into place, and it's a leverage net. So I'm holding it here, and it bends down and supports at my forearm. And then I kind of just scoop that bad boy up. And so I haven't missed a fish since I bought that net.
Is it more of a chance that you're gonna roll over if you're reaching down to grab that fish with your hand?
I would imagine for some, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you're down there trying to grab it, a lot of times what happens if you don't stick your thumb in there correctly, right, and you just put a treble hook in there, there's 2 more exposed hooks down that mouth. So if you don't grab that thing right and it gets you, and then it starts shaking, things can go bad really fast. Or let's say you're getting ready to get it and it shoots out to the right a little bit, and by instinct you kind of go after it, throwing off your equilibrium,
Yeah.
and boom, you're going over, right? So there's all kinds of things that can happen when it comes to that. But I've never had trouble with that, but I have pretty good balance as well. But I'm sure others may have.
Yeah. Okay, we're about at the end of this, so I'll go ahead and do you have any good things that you got planned for the future with your channel
Oh yeah, I mean, I
that
just
you got planned for videos and whatnot?
yeah, right now I'm working on I think I mentioned at the beginning, $50 versus $250 rod. What's the difference? Like, what do you get? So back in the day, you'll remember this. So back in 1994, there was a bunch of infomercials with a bunch of lures. Do you remember the banjo minnow and the helicopter lure
Oh
commercials?
yeah, I
Oh
remember the
yeah,
helicopter one.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, Roland Martin, that stupid helicopter
yeah.
thing. So I found one of those new in box at a flea market next to where I live. And so I'm going to do a video, and hopefully I'm going to take it out this weekend. We're going to catch some bass with it, and it's just
Oh,
fascinating. So
that'll be interesting.
having some fun pulling. I mean, it was like a time capsule. It had a VHS tape in there showing you how to fish. I mean, that's how old. I mean, the internet came out in 1993. This thing came out in 1994. Like, it's almost pre-internet. And so I opened that up. I was like, this thing's freaking amazing. So I got that going on, and what else I got going on? The banjo minnow is another one that came out in 1994. Just it sold over 2 million kits on this particular lure, and it was the #1 lure for 2 years in a row. So I found some OG banjo minnows. One of my
Oh
channel members
man.
sent them to me. So I'm going to fish those this weekend and shoot some videos on it. It should be a good time. Should be a good time.
And we got one. Do you prefer river, pond, or lake fishing?
Oh, well, even if I'm kayak, I mean, you can kayak fish the river. I've never done it really. It seems like a ton of fun. What do I prefer? That's a tough one. I love bouncing around from pond to pond. I primarily lake fish because I got a bunch of quality lakes around me. But
Yeah.
I love hopping into a pond, fishing it for a half hour, fishing the whole thing, pulling, dragging my yak, putting it on my trailer, driving to the next pond, and doing that for days on end. I lose my ever loving mind. So I think I like doing that. Oh, man, that's such a tough question. I don't know if I love them all equally. Sorry.
Yeah.
I love them
Depends
all.
what the fish are catching.
Right. Right.
If you don't catch nothing in that pond, well, I like lake fishing better because I catch more over there.
I used to suck. At fishing. I mean, I would catch fish, but not the rate I do now. And I always tell people are like, oh, I had someone make a comment on my channel this past week. He's like, you catch 4-pounders like I catch 1-pounders. And I was thinking, like, okay, the reason for that is because for the past 2.5 years, I put in the work, right? When you have to teach something on YouTube, and you know this,
Yeah.
you have to become an expert on it before you go out there and start talking about it, or people will roast you, right? It's
Yeah.
YouTube. They'll let you know if you're wrong real quick. And
Yep.
so don't bring your a lot of your opinions to a fact show when it comes to fishing type of deal. And so by putting in the work, this is one my best years ever. And I'm catching the biggest fish in my life, most fish in my life, but it didn't happen overnight. And so
Oh yeah.
put in the work, and you'll get to a place where you'll be happy with those results.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. It's right on the hour mark.
Oh,
And
heck yeah.
thank you for hanging out with us tonight. And if you guys are interested in fishing or kayak fishing, make sure you head over to his channel. Great stuff, and he has lives on Tuesdays. Is it every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday night, 8:30
Okay.
Eastern.
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks everybody for hanging out with us. And on his side and on Facebook over there. We'll catch you on the next one.